Thanks for joining me. I'm Stephanie Soares, owner of Cod Bike Fit, and today we'll be going over the second session of the Women's Cycling Workshop, Building Confidence and Skills. If you missed the first session, we went over the basics of getting started, including selecting a bike and making sure you have the appropriate equipment to safely get started. But for today, we'll be working with bike handling and joining a group ride. So let's get started. So the basic bike handling skills we'll cover today are braking, shifting, and pedal stroke. So the basics of braking, it's important to acknowledge the difference between having disc brakes and caliper rim style brakes, using your front and rear brakes, and the basics of braking. So disc brakes are known for having excellent stopping power, and they're great in wet weather conditions, and they're pretty popular on most styles of bikes these days. The other style of brakes are caliper brakes, also known as rim brakes. These are still popular on bikes, but I think they're being phased out a little bit by the disc brakes. Calipers are literally squeezing brake pads against the rim of your wheel to create friction to stop. And something important to note is that there is a lever to engage and disengage the caliper brakes. So important to know where that lever is and how to use it so that you can disengage the brakes to remove a wheel and make sure that you re-engage the brakes before you go for a ride. So engaging your brakes, the right brake lever will engage the rear brake. The left brake lever will engage the front brake. And that's really important to know, especially when you are just getting started and learning how to be comfortable with braking. So when you're learning to brake, you want to start by using the rear brake and getting comfortable with that, and then gradually trying to incorporate the front brake by feathering the front brake. Ideally, you want to be able to confidently use both brakes to stop. However, you definitely want to put your preference towards the rear brake to start. If you get nervous and you squeeze the front brake too quickly, it can cause you to flip over the handlebars. So that's certainly not a good way to get started. So just start getting comfortable with stopping by using the rear brake. So the front brake is the most powerful. So definitely use caution when you're starting to use that front brake. When you're braking, especially if you have to stop in a hurry, try to shift your weight over the back wheel. That'll keep you from lifting up on that back tire. Just a good practice to get in. You may actually have to come up off the saddle a little bit and shift your weight back that way, and that's perfectly fine. So another thing to keep in mind is you want to brake or slow down at least before you enter a turn or a corner, and avoid using the front brake when you're turning for sure. So basic braking safety, check your brakes before you ride, make sure that the front brake and the rear brake are working appropriately, and you can do that just by walking next to your bike and squeezing one lever at a time just to make sure that the bike stops. The other thing is to make sure that your setup allows you to comfortably apply your brakes. A lot of times with women having smaller hands, sometimes the brake levers are out of reach or not comfortable to reach, and there are easy adjustments that can be made to your bike setup to bring the levers a little closer to accommodate for smaller hands. Another thing is to make sure you practice your braking skills in a setting without traffic and away from other riders. So just make sure that you're confident in being able to stop. Obviously, very important skill when you're learning to ride. So now we'll go into shifting. We'll go over terminology, the controls, when to shift, and just some general tips for shifting. So there are two styles of shifters. Drop handlebars, which are found on road bikes, are the handlebars where looking from the side it forms a C. The shifters for this style are actually on the brake lever. And to shift, you'll just push that lever inward until you feel a click. The other style would be on flat handlebars, which are found on mountain bikes, hybrid bikes, fat bikes, things like that. To shift on this style, you're using your thumb to press a paddle. And then on some bikes with flat handlebars, you'll shift by turning a dial that's on the thumb side of your handlebars, and that will just be turning forward or back. So really, it's just a matter of getting comfortable with the setup that you have on your specific bike. So terminology for shifting, I'll just mention it. It's not terribly important to master this when you're starting, but just helpful to know in case someone is giving you instruction or you'd like to ask for help. Helpful to know the right terms to use to apply to your situation. So we'll start with the least resistance. So when you have your chain on the small ring in the front and the biggest cog in the back, that is the least resistance, and also called a low gear. To achieve a lower resistance, you downshift. So just some terms to become familiar with. On the flip side, the most resistance is when you're on the big ring in the front and the smallest cog in the back, and this is called being in a high gear. To achieve this higher resistance, you upshift. So shifter controls, using the big lever versus the small lever. So the big lever moves the chain to a bigger ring, and the small lever moves the chain to a smaller ring. When you're using the right hand and shifting with the big lever, it'll make the resistance easier. When you're shifting with the right hand and using the smaller lever, it will make the resistance harder. With the left hand, if you're shifting with the big lever, it'll make the resistance harder. And with the left hand, if you're shifting with a smaller lever, it will make the resistance easier. Seems like a lot to wrap your head around, and it is when you're starting, so don't worry about getting caught up with all of that, just practice. So go out, start shifting and braking in a low traffic area, and just feel it out. Just know that the right hand will make small changes to your resistance. So it's great to start by really getting comfortable using your right hand for braking, because you'll be using the rear brake, and also for shifting, because you'll feel the difference in those little changes. So the left hand will make big changes in your shifting, because your left hand is controlling that front set of cogs. So you'll be going big ring to little ring with the left side, and that's really a big change in the resistance. So like I said, to start, don't get too caught up in all the terminology. I just wanted to make you aware of it to start, but definitely just get out there, try it out, and start just doing things with your right hand to start, get confident there, and then incorporate the left side. It's also important to get to know your gears so you know how to respond to inclines and declines. And then shift to maintain a steady cadence, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So a word about pedal stroke is to keep it steady. Your cadence and your rate of pedal strokes should maintain relatively consistent throughout your ride. This can be achieved by appropriate shifting. So get confident with your shifting and shift as you approach an incline or decline. That way you are keeping a pretty steady cadence and you're not really grinding hard uphills or free spinning, meaning that you just don't have enough force going through your pedal stroke. So let's transition into group ride etiquette. So the key to safe group riding is communication. So using hand signals is really important. We went over this in the first session, but definitely become familiar with appropriate hand signals so that those around you know what you intend to do. Another important thing, especially when riding in a group, is to announce or point to obstacles, such as potholes, sand, and approaching cars. Announcing slowing and stopping is important, and passing directions through the group, such as if there's a car behind you, you would yell car back, or upcoming directions such as turns. At intersections, if there are no cars, you want to announce clear, or if there are cars to the left or right, you want to announce car left or car right so that your fellow riders are aware. So again, definitely important to review the appropriate hand signals. And the most important thing is to be predictable and pay attention. So avoid sudden stops or turns if you can help it. If you have to make a quick change, just announce it verbally so that people have a chance to adapt to what you are doing in front of them. Avoid overlapping wheels with the rider in front of you. So it's really important to make sure that your front wheel does not overlap with the rider in front of you's rear wheel. Can definitely cause a crash. So make sure that you're staying behind the rider in front of you and giving enough space. If you do want to pull up next to a rider, just verbally let them know so that they don't turn into you. And also important to give extra space when you're descending. So local group ride opportunities on the Cape. The Cape Cod Cycling Club organizes some group rides. The Appalachian Mountain Club does some group rides as well. And if you're looking to do some mountain biking, the New England Mountain Bike Association has a chapter on the Cape that's pretty active with scheduling group rides. Local bike shops also put together ride opportunities, but there are so many opportunities for group rides. So definitely, if that's something that you're looking for, you can start with the resources that I've mentioned, but you can also come across plenty of other great opportunities to get out on the bike with other folks. So just ride opportunities locally. I've definitely recommend starting on a bike path. So you have the Cape Cod Canal bike path, the Shining Sea bike path, and the Cape Cod Rail Trail are all great opportunities to ride locally. So that's the presentation for today. Definitely reach out to me if you have any questions. You can reach me, Stephanie, at capecodbikefit.com. You follow me on social media, Instagram or Facebook at Cape Cod Bike Fit, and my website is capecodbikefit.com. Definitely stay tuned for the next session, which will be basic bike maintenance and roadside repair. And also, I realize some of these concepts are hard to kind of talk through, so I will be putting together some YouTube videos, and I'll be putting those on the Cape Cod Bike Fit YouTube channel, so you can look there as well for some additional resources. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, and hopefully I'll see you out on the trail.